Hey guys, thanks so much for coming back to Rideout MMA. We have a really great video for you today. We're going to be breaking down hooks to the body, one of my favorite things to teach. So get ready. If you want to watch last week's video, it's going to be somewhere on the screen here, and that really helps with this. So if you want to check that out, make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the video, all that fun stuff, and let's get into it. So first off, when we're throwing hooks to the body, we got to figure out what we're actually talking about. So for me, there's kind of two different variations of throwing hooks to the body. One where we level change and one where we don't. So when I'm hooking Yazzie, when I'm referring to a level change, that's when I bend into my legs and my hook is basically on the exact same plane as my shoulders. So my fist, my elbow, my shoulders are all at the same height when I'm throwing that strike. My preferred version of throwing a body hook is a shovel hook, which is somewhere in between a hook and an uppercut. You have your shovel hooks. So instead, we don't need to level change, and it's more akin to throwing an uppercut, just with a slightly different angle. So for throwing that strike, what are our actual goals? Right? I want to strike her liver, which is on her right rear side. I want to strike her stomach, which is more or less in the center. And I want to strike her spleen, which is on her left side, right here. So when we're striking those, right, the ribs are kind of in the way, but right at the bottom of our ribs, that's where our organs hang out just a little bit. We don't want to get into the intestines down here because that doesn't really hurt people. It doesn't really take their breath away. And we want to strike them so we can put them down with one and hurt them right off the bat. So the goal, especially with this strike, is to dig underneath the ribs and get to those internal organs. So first off, understanding what our arms need to be doing when we're throwing this strike. When I want to strike her body, I don't want to just use my arm. Right? One of my favorite sayings is that our arms are not the creators of the power, they're the communicators of it. So when I'm throwing this hook, a really important thing to learn, right, is the structure of our actual arm. You don't want to land the punch against the body and have it collapse behind your shoulder like this, which so often a lot of strikers do. They'll throw their hook, it will hit, and then their shoulder will continue on afterwards because they're not structured from start to finish. So our pec needs to be strong, our shoulder needs to be strong, right? We're flexing our bicep, squeezing our fist when we drive that punch in, and not just doing this. All right, we need to finish with a lot of strength. So a simple way to learn that feeling and kind of really engage those muscles, take your arms out really wide in front of you and make those fists and press them together. All right, so when you do this, you'll engage your pecs, right, your biceps, your triceps, and all that stuff will be rock solid. So when I'm learning this punch, what I'll do is Yazzie will hold the pads for me. All right, so she holds at that little angle on the side of her body, one where I can still dig against that punch. I'm going to start at the finish. Just turn this way a little bit for me. So I'm going to start at the finish, figure out what I want that punch to be looking at. It's slightly tilted up and in. My elbow is directly behind where the energy of my fist is going. My opposite side hand is still in place, and my shoulders are turned through. So all of those things happen together. From this position, I try to push her over. And not by pushing with my arm, but rather holding my arm strong in that position and driving through with my body. And that's where you'll really learn that structure to the arm, and you'll feel your core engage, your chest engage, and your entire arm directly behind that punch when we're trying to drive it through her. So again, I find that position, boom, this is the finish, right? That's where I want to be digging more or less right underneath her ribs into her liver, and I drive through. And she's going to hold in place. I'm going to try to push her over just by turning. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the right. I find that finishing position, all right? I'm connecting to the side of her body, and I'm going to turn as hard as I can to try to drive that fist through her just by rotating. The second step for learning the strike. All right. Again, I'm going to start from that finishing position with my lead shovel hook, right, connected to the side of her body. Okay, this is what I want it to look like at the finish. Again, I'm going to engage all of these muscles in my arm, and without moving my arm or wiggling it even a little bit, I'm going to pull my shoulders back. Now I'm loaded on that side, ready to throw this strike. So, all right, I pull my shoulders back, and just by rotating, I'm going to bring the punch to my partner. Where people go wrong with this is as they start to move, they let that same thing that I described before happen, right? Their shoulder sort of pops forward, their elbow falls behind their back, and they lead like this into the strike. Instead, right, we keep it inside the entire time. My shoulders protracted, right, driven forward. My pec is strong, my arm is strong. I connect to the pad. I pull back, right, and just by turning, I bring that strike in. All right, utilizing, right, again, the power of my body, right, the power of my body to drive into that strike and not just doing this. There's so much more power and penetration that we can generate by turning our shoulders and our hips into that punch versus kind of slapping at the body. Same thing on the right side. Again, I'm going to start at the finish, right? Find that perfect hooking position, and your pad holder should be communicating to, that doesn't really look right, etc., for the person that you're working with. You can also do this on a bag, obviously. So, right, I connect to the pad. All right, I'm going to find that perfect position, shoulder protracted, right, strong in front. It's not dumping behind, retracted. It's right here, elbow directly behind the fist. And I'm going to turn myself back. Lead hand's going to stay steady and rotate myself in. Right, just to learn that feeling of driving that punch in with as little energy from the arm as possible. It's all about what our body is doing. So now for throwing the actual strike and what it should look like in real time. First off, we don't want to have our hands whip away from our body, giving off a huge telegraph before we throw it. I want to keep my hands tight and in consistent position. I don't necessarily care as your online coach where your hand position is, but I just want it to be consistent. If you're constantly moving your hand position when you're going for these strikes, then the finish isn't going to look the same either. And that's just intuitive, right? If I'm doing this, and then I try to throw the strike, you're probably going to get more into that whippy, not so clean looking body hook. So instead, right, I keep my hands right here. I'm going to stay consistent with it. As if you come right here for me. All right, I'm going to load. And watch the way I load my shoulders. It's just enough to get my lead shoulder slightly behind my rear. I'm going to load. Right? I'm bending into that front leg. I am not already opening up at this point. I am tight. As I turn back, I'm going to open up into that strike, and I'm not going to swing it open. All right? It is not a whip of a strike. We stay structured the entire time. So I stay tight, all right? And as I open up, boom, I finish right there, digging underneath it. We want the shortest possible distance of our punch leaving our guard and getting to the pad. I load with my shoulders. As I turn back, I open up, boom, and I tighten that fist and dig underneath the pad. So right again, I turn my shoulders and my hips. All right, I'm gonna give it a little bit of pop. All right, short load. As I turn, I open up. You shouldn't need to feel like you have to whip it open to get it to that body. Cool? Same thing on the rear side. Okay? All right, same idea. All right, give you that little angle. As I turn, I'm opening up into that strike. If you feel more comfortable with a very subtle load, then you can do it. But in general, your rear side should already be loaded. You shouldn't need to feel like you have to go 1, 2. And frankly, I'd prefer if you didn't while you're learning this strike, just so you don't build that habit of going, I'm gonna fucking hit you, and then you swing that punch in, okay? So instead, you stay tight. If you need it, subtle load. If not, great. As I turn, I open up into that strike. Now look how short I can throw it. And I'm still gonna get great penetration on it. Just trust how strong your body is and really make sure you're engaged right here. So I stay tight, a little load if you want it. I open up and drive through. You okay? Yeah. All right. I turn my shoulders back, or rather my lead shoulder back, as I open up into that strike. It is not whipped open, then whipped in. Okay? Make sense? Good. Guys, just to quickly summarize, all right, when we're throwing this strike, we're not telegraphing by whipping our hand open. We're doing loads by turning our shoulders back, and again, not opening up at the wrong time. I stay tight, and then when I'm throwing the strike, it's not about the whip of the arm. It's about the structure and strength of that arm when you throw it. If you have any questions, then please put them in the comments. If there's something that you want to see in the future, all right, again, put it in the comments. Like, subscribe to Rideout MMA, and we'll see you next time.